that Derek Barnett has this year, stretching back to last year, 10 straight games without a sack. Why is he still on the lineup, BLG?
Yeah, I think he might have like 1 sack in his last 12 games or something. It's crazy. It's nuts. Derek Barnett, part of the reason he's still here is because the Eagles can't get rid of him because Howie Roseman restructured his contract before the season. Howie Roseman, also the guy who picked up his 5th-year option. It's a great question. I think a lot of people are tempted to be like, hey, let's just build up the defense or the team, and then we'll figure out quarterback later. But I mean, like, okay, that's kind of how you get into a point like Washington is, though. Or, or these other teams that kind of, like, you're too good to really get the quarterback, but you're not bad enough to actually contend because you don't have the quarterback. So I think it's really dangerous to say, ignore the quarterback for now, put that on hold. Like, because if you don't have that, then you have nothing. And maybe it's about getting aggressive and using those picks to try to acquire a more established player. Russell Wilson. I doubt they're going to be able to get Aaron Rodgers, but someone who could try to bring in like that. Drafting is obviously a tough thing. I think people have to calm down a little bit with, there's no quarterbacks in this class. I mean, people said, Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota were going to be amazing, and then they weren't.
It is a manic Monday here on Birds 365. Jeff Carr in for Johnny Mack, who's making his way back from Vegas with his tail between his legs, just like everybody else associated with the Philadelphia Eagles after yesterday's game against the Raiders. Here to lend a different look at how bad it was, the Eagles and the Raiders, is our buddy from Bleeding Green Nation, their editor, their leader, their chief cook and bottle washer. It is our buddy Brandon Lee Gowton. BLG, you've been watching Eagles for years now. You've been the main guy at Bleeding Green Nation forever. How do you put yesterday's loss in perspective? We've dealt with enough losses last year, getting Doug Peterson fired this year, not a great start at 2-5. How does yesterday's slot in with all the other slop that we've seen out of the Eagles for the last year and a half?
I just think it's an embarrassing loss. It's not to say that the Eagles should have came out and dominated this Raiders team, but the Eagles had a lot of things going for them on paper heading into yesterday's matchup. I mean, like, they had some favorable matchups in the trenches, you would think. The Raiders unexpectedly were missing Darren Waller, their best offensive weapon by far. The Eagles had extra rest coming off the mini bye. It just thought like, okay, the Eagles should be respectable in this game. They shouldn't get blown out. And for them to get dominated like they did, and in some of the ways that were favorable in terms of the trenches and everything, it's just embarrassing. They were outplayed. They were outcoached across the board. It's a total failure and embarrassing effort.
What is the biggest problem with this football team right now?
I mean, so I think there's a couple of different ways to answer this. I think for me, and I think a lot of Eagles fans, the problem is that there's a lot of long-term issues here. It's not just about this team. It's not just week to week. It's a long-standing thing. It was at the end of last season when the Eagles decided all they needed to do was get rid of Doug Peterson and Jim Schwartz and trade Carson Wentz, and that would fix everything, and they can transition to this great new era. Well, not really, because there's a lot of issues in the front office that are still here, and you hire a new coaching staff, okay, but they look totally in over their heads, and Jeffrey Lurie set the table for this season before it began. We all know this. He said this is a, quote, real transition period, and he compared it to 2016. 2016 did not feel as discouraging as this does right now. So I don't want to hear that this is like 2016 all over again. The Eagles are building towards something great, because they're not. You're not seeing any positive signs from this team that you think, okay, maybe we can kind of, build on this in the future. And next year, and we just, do some things. We make the right free agent signings. We hit on these draft picks we have, and everything will be great. There's not a sense of that. It feels a lot less hopeful than it did at that time.
You gave a whole bunch of points there, and they were all very on point, as a matter of fact. The Eagles are struggling in a lot of different areas. It's very difficult to narrow it down to number one that's on the top of the list. We won't even mention Carson Wentz, who looked okay last night in the Colts win in the rain out there in San Francisco. We'll keep that for another day. I'm piling on top here, and I know that, but I think they deserve it. as bad as Nick Sirianni's play calling is, as inconsistent as Jalen Hurts is, as big a mistake as they made by moving Mailata from left tackle to right tackle, back to left tackle while he's hurt. I got a bigger problem with the defense, BLG, because Jonathan Gannon told us when this season started, one of the keys is going to be is surprise. We don't want to tip our hand. We want to be able to deceive the offense. We want to have the upper hand and not be able to be matched up. They're as obvious, they're as blatant as vanilla ice cream that you just know what's coming. Every single play, they're going to be in a soft shell defense. They're going to let you throw the ball underneath. They're not going to have playmaking linebackers. Where's the deception? Jonathan Gannon talked so much about deception. We're going to be able to deceive other teams. No, they might be the most obvious defense in the National Football League. They surely were yesterday against the Raiders.
31 of 34 passes for Derek Carr. 3 incompletions. That is insane. 91 or whatever it is percent complete. That's just so unheard of. I know offense is easier than ever in today's NFL, unless you're the Eagles, apparently. But like, it's just so unthinkable how that can happen. And you're right. This defense is fooling no one. It's so easy for quarterbacks who aren't Sam Darnold, who is terrible and shouldn't be playing and got benched yesterday, to just sit back. Yeah, exactly. To just sit back and Jimmy G too, and to sit back and just take what's there. And there's no creativity. And like, people want to be like, oh, well, it doesn't have the linebackers or the talent or whatever. What happened to the offseason when Jonathan Gannon and Nick Sirianni both were getting like showered with praise for being like, oh, we're going to coach up to the players' strengths. We don't have a scheme. It's all about the players. I mean, BS. No, it's not. You're trying to institute this scheme. It's all about this scheme. It's clearly not working. It's not creative at all. I get the theory of wanting to eliminate big plays, but not at the expense of just giving the other offense what they want. Like offenses with good quarterbacks are going to be able to go down drive after drive and sustain good drives. Yeah, against the bad quarterbacks, okay, but you're not winning a championship with only playing bad quarterbacks. You have to have some kind of recipe to beat the good ones too, and the Eagles don't have that. And more concerning than maybe anything, besides the results on the field, the players aren't buying this either. I mean, Fletcher Cox, Rodney McLeod, those comments after the game, they clearly are not thrilled with this scheme.
You pretty much led right into my next question. Fletcher Cox's frustration, obviously, we all know the quote now, I don't get paid to cover screens. I get paid for set. Even Jason Kelce, I've never seen Jason Kelce as frustrated as he was yesterday. I'm not even talking about the penalty. I think a couple plays before that, they did like a bubble screen on first down, and he just shakes his head. Like, have you ever seen this from veterans on this team? These guys are Super Bowl champions here.
I think that's a good point. Like, these are guys who have credibility in the NFL. They've established themselves. And this coaching staff very much doesn't. And again, there was table setting for this year about like this, not being a finished product, and they're going to grow. And Jeffrey Lurie literally used the phrase or something like, when he hired Nick Sirianni on the call that the Eagles released, that he couldn't wait to see the coach Nick Sirianni is going to become. But like, okay, I get you can say like you're not expecting him to be the best coach in the NFL year one, but like they're way far off from that. I mean, what are you seeing from this coaching staff that you're like, okay, there's something here. There's something here. They're not a finished product, but there's, maybe with time they can kind of become something great. No, you're not seeing anything special, anything worth keeping here beyond this year. It's a disaster.
And I'll give Fletcher Cox a lot of credit because he stepped to the mic yesterday, and he certainly got his point across. Yeah, I'm not here to cover screens. He didn't need to really say anything more after that lack of aggression. But he did so with some respect. He didn't just go off. He didn't just throw Gannon under the bus. He more like gently nudged Gannon out underneath the bus, which I thought was very well done on his part. Because he could have gone off, and then you could see the fissures in his team. So kudos to Fletcher Cox. I thought he handled his post-game responsibilities very well. But Fletch, how about the guys on the defensive line with you? And we know Hargrave is having a really good year. Their defensive ends stink on ice. They made a decision to give Josh Sweat a contract extension, so you have to hope this was just a bad day for Josh Sweat, and he's having a below-average year, but not a terrible year. Why is Derek Barnett still here? Why is he still playing I, and Jeff had the same number of sacks that Derek Barnett has this year, stretching back to last year, 10 straight games without a sack. Why is he still on the lineup, BLG?
Yeah, I think he might have like 1 sack in his last 12 games or something. It's crazy. It's nuts. Derek Barnett, part of the reason he's still here is because the Eagles can't get rid of him because Howie Roseman restructured his contract before the season. Howie Roseman, also the guy who picked up his 5th-year option for his 2017 first-round pick. That clearly isn't being a difference maker in a positive way for this team. So that's really frustrating. And look, Fletcher Cox can complain about the scheme, and I think he has some fair gripes about that. But this is Fletcher Cox. He's the highest paid player on the roster. And I believe he only has 2 sacks and 4 quarterback hits in his last 11 games. That's just not the kind of impact at the end of the day. You're looking for the star player on your team. And that's kind of the issue around. There's issues all around. The coaching is bad. The talent isn't as good as the resources that are invested in it. It's not being justified properly. Everything is bad. There's not like one thing and one thing only that is bad. It's not that simple of a fix. And that's why it's kind of just hopeless from a long-term standpoint. Like, because you see, everyone knows there are issues here. There's bigger issues than just fixing one thing, but no one has faith that Jeffrey Lurie is going to actually do what it takes to fix that thing and wipe the slate clean and kind of give people. See, that's my thing, guys. I know I'm kind of rambling here and I'm going off topic, but like the thing with the Eagles to me is if you made a change across the board and wiped the slate clean, at least we could kind of give them patience and benefit of the doubt. But until they do that, they're not going to earn that. This organization has very much not earned the benefit of the doubt. Since the start of last season, they're like 4 teams that have fewer wins than them, and you're talking about like the Jags and the Lions and the Texans. Like the Eagles think they're this great team and they're among the NFL's elites. They're not. They're among the NFL's bottoms, and they don't realize it.
That's fair. Jeff, let me just ask a quick follow-up question. Along those lines, and again, questioning the overall structure of the team, Milt Williams, they used a 3rd-round draft pick on this guy. Brandon, the other BLG, Brandon Graham goes out, and we all acknowledge that Derek Barnett is doing squat. Ryan Kerrigan, who Jody McDonald guilty thought was a good signing, never even shows up on the stat sheet. The guys aren't getting it done. Why isn't Milton Williams getting more time at defensive end? If you got him to be a guy who could be a Brandon Graham clone, Brandon Graham part 2, move inside and outside, I never see him in there as a defensive end. Why aren't they giving him a shot outside? He can't do less than Derek Barnett. Come on, Howie, Mr. Advance my own draft pick. You use the 3rd on this guy. If you do, as we believe, influence playing time and twist coaches' arms and the like, why isn't Milton Williams playing outside?
It's a great question. Milton Williams has 0 sacks, 0 quarterback hits, and 0 tackles for loss this year. And, he's not playing a ton, so that could be part of it. Harder to get the production when you're not playing. But why is Ryan Kerrigan on the team, honestly, at this point? He's 1 stat, and I think like 173 snaps this year. He's basically invisible out there. He's not a long-term piece. The Eagles aren't good enough to be like, sacrificing some of those long-term, the playing time for those long-term pieces like Milton Williams, even Teron Jackson, Teron Jackson might stink. I don't care. Like, play him instead of Ryan Kerrigan, his snaps don't mean anything for this team. You're not finding out more about him. Trade Ryan Kerrigan for literally whatever you can get, which might be nothing. In that case, again, just cut him. The trade deadline is in about a week on November 2nd. So, figure it out by that point. It's just really disappointing. If this is a transition year, play the young guys. Don't play these veteran players who aren't going to be here and aren't consequential to this team anyway. So yeah, Milton Williams should absolutely be playing more. Now he got banged up obviously in yesterday's game. We'll see where he's at injury wise, but he should absolutely be seeing a lot more snaps as across the board with the other young guys.
BLG, I remember 1998 very, very vividly. Like that team was going to be terrible. Lurie knew they were going to be terrible. He knew Ray Rhodes was on the way out. But Ray Rhodes always played the young guys, even though he was the lame duck coach. I feel like since the Super Bowl, Lurie's lost his mind. Like, he just is like, oh, we were the Super Bowl champions 4 years ago, and I'm the greatest owner since sliced bread. And I don't know. Like, it's almost like he's turned into a different person since that whole Super Bowl, since he finally got that trophy. And he kind of is lying and deceiving to the fans this year, like this team is going to be a competitive team.
Yeah, I mean, they wanted to toe the line, right? They were like, we're going to be in a transition phase. He didn't want to use the word rebuild. He didn't say this is going to be a year, where they're going to take their medicine entirely and kind of just work towards the future, as Howie Roseman often likes to do as well. He kind of wants to he doesn't want to pick a lane and just stay in it. He wants to do both. He wants to build towards the future and try to win now, which I respect to some extent. But like not to the point where I think this year should have really just been more all in on the future and admitting that you're not good enough and investing everything. And now look, they have the draft picks next year. They didn't give out like any crazy contracts in free agency this year in terms of like locking up future money into old and bad players. So they've done some of that, but I don't think they've done enough of that. And the 1 year signings that they have made, like Ryan Kerrigan, Anthony Harris, Eric Wilson, these aren't building, like these are just like flops. They're not any kind of impactful, meaningful difference makers. And that's okay from the standpoint they're 1 year deals, you just move on, but you didn't gain anything. You didn't make any progress. At best, you just stayed neutral. And if you're not getting ahead in the NFL, you're getting behind. And that's where this team is. They're very much behind a lot of these other teams. And again, it comes down to like, where is the hope for the future? What makes you feel good? Okay, they have these very high draft picks next year in the 2022 NFL draft. And if they get those picks right, that could be, a core to build on moving forward. But like, you still have to figure out the quarterback, the coaching staff, who knows? And do you even trust the GM here in the personnel department to make the right picks at those picks and get those core pieces? It's all just, I don't mean to be doom and gloom and like have that be my agenda or anything, but like this is the reality of the situation. And quite frankly, it sucks.
And we all have to deal with it. Brandon Lee Gowton here with us on Birds 365. All right. No, you wrote about it. No, we talked about it. Ooh, the mini bye after the Thursday night game. Extra time to prepare for their next game. Not any extra practice. The players benefit. They get that much more downtime. But the coaches had that much more time to study film and self-evaluate and put their heads together. Did you see anything yesterday, BLG, that led you to believe that they did benefit from the extra time? Because it looked like the same old to me.
The opening script obviously was successful and good, and I think we saw some looks in terms of them running the ball from under center instead of just every run play being an RPO, like Nick Sirianni has talked about in the past. So there was that, but then there was nothing because the offense totally stalled out. Jalen Hurts, like it's again, there's failures at every level. The play calling isn't inspiring. You have Jalen Hurts who can't hit a receiver, Devontae Smith especially, like on a slant route. It's like it's a slant, guys. It's like one of the easiest throws. It's the most basic throw, one of the most basic throws in the NFL, and he can't execute it. The ball is behind. The ball is low. Like at the end of the day, like you have to make that throw. There are throws there to be made. I totally do not buy the notion that we can't evaluate Jalen Hurts fairly. Now I'm not going to say like he's been set up to succeed in every possible way. I get that, but like there are still plays to be made here, and he can't make those throws. It's inaccuracy. He's holding on to the ball forever. There were bad decisions running the ball yesterday, where at one point he slides down short of the marker, and and then instead of getting the first down that he easily could have gotten, and Hurts admitted this after the game, the Eagles ultimately get knocked back on the sequence. That was where Jason Kelce had that penalty, and what could have been a first down ended up being like 4th and 25 or whatever it was. It's just like this team, they just stink across the board.
So, going further on Jalen Hurts here, did the Eagles even try to bring this guy back next year? Because, look, we know the draft situation. It's the second pick, 6th and 13th, but this quarterback class isn't good. I think Kenny Pickett or Matt Corral might be the two best quarterbacks at this point. I'm not sold on either of them, so what do you do?
It's a great question. I think a lot of people are tempted to be like, hey, let's just build up the defense or the team, and then we'll figure out quarterback later. But I mean, like, okay, that's kind of how you get into a point like Washington is, though. Or, or these other teams that kind of like you're too good to really get the quarterback, but you're not bad enough to actually contend because you don't have the quarterback. So I think it's really dangerous to say, ignore the quarterback for now, put that on hold. Like, because if you don't have that, then you have nothing. And maybe it's about getting aggressive and using those picks to try to acquire a more established player. Russell Wilson. I doubt they're going to be able to get Aaron Rodgers, but someone who could try to bring in like that. Drafting is obviously a tough thing. I think people have to calm down a little bit with, there's no quarterbacks in this class. I mean, people said, Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota were going to be amazing, and then they weren't. People said Carson Wentz and Jared Goff weren't nearly as good as Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston, and those guys are still both still starters, where Mariota's a backup and Jameis Winston not the most inspiring starter. So we don't always know what the quarterbacks look like coming out of a class, but certainly there's no obvious answer. It's not like, okay, like for the Jags example last year, like Trevor Lawrence at the top, we can just get that guy and then he's our guy, or Joe Burrow for the Bengals. So there's no easy answer right now, but I think, I don't know if Jalen Hurts is back next year. I mean, he's under contract. He's cheap. I think you would be able to keep him around, but he can't be their plan A as a starter. That much I know.
I know that it has been well reported that Deshaun Watson doesn't want to come to Philadelphia. It's not his choice, and he has final say over where he goes because he does have a no-trade clause. There's certain pressures that could be exerted by the Texans, not necessarily by the Eagles, but by the National Football League as to how they're handling him. Right now, they're letting him sit around and collect his checks, which is a pretty good deal if you're Deshaun Watson. I don't think he deserves that, but that's what we're dealing with right now. Is there any way the Eagles can try and improve their position to potentially acquire Deshaun Watson? I know there are some people out there that don't want any part of Deshaun Watson, and his legal situation is what it is, and it may turn even uglier down the road. But if we're just narrow focused on the football right now, having Deshaun Watson or any of the other Eagle options at quarterbacks, Deshaun kind of sticks out like a sore thumb that he would be a major, major, major upgrade. Is there anything that the Eagles can do to make that more possible?
No, they can't. But I mean, look, they've tried. They very much tried. I mean, I think it was John McClain who said yesterday, that the Eagles tried to get Deshaun Watson, but Deshaun Watson said no, and that matters, as you said, because he has the no trade clause. And I get it from Deshaun Watson's perspective. I don't even think it's just about the Eagles being bad right now. It's about the market. And I think Deshaun Watson, who was caught in the offseason being filmed by reporters and being like, why are you guys filming me? I don't think he's going to handle that very well if he comes to Philly, because there's a lot of, you might not know this, but there's a decent amount of media scrutiny here. I think he wants Miami, in part because that's a softer market to be in. I don't think the Eagles can do anything because it's about the market, I think, in part. And again, that's not a lack of effort, though, from the Eagles. I think they know, and they have known, that Jalen Hurts, for as much as there are some things to like about him, he is not a championship caliber quarterback. I think that much should be very clear, and they are going to be looking and exhausting all avenues they can to get one, as they should be. But it's just a matter of actually, do you have the faith they can pick the right guy, or if they'll even have the opportunity to pick the right guy? Because right now, again, those options aren't just obviously out there.
So, how can I word this? In your mind, who would be the most ideal quarterback for them to trade for? Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson. I'm sure there'll be other ones across the board as the offseason draws near.
Yeah, I guess sometimes it's possible someone pops up. Like, did we know for sure at this time last year? Maybe, that Matt Stafford would be available. So there's a name that could pop up. But, I would say Russell Wilson. I mean, that's a guy that, obviously the Eagles wanted once upon a time, and Howie Roseman thought he could wait to get. Alas, was not the case. But it's not like, you bring Russell Wilson here and that fixes everything. I think it helps a lot for sure. But again, there's no guarantee they can even get him. I mean, and they're giving up a lot of picks to get him, and then you have other holes to fill. It's just, again, there's no easy answer for this team. It's not like you just flip a switch and everything is fixed. I think that's a start to maybe fixing things potentially. And I think even though he is older, he's going to be 33. He is 33 or going to be 33. I still think he has multiple good seasons in him. But man, I really think this organization needs to wipe the slate clean. They need to wake up and stop thinking there's something they're not. And until they do that, and there's no evidence that they are, then they very much do not deserve the benefit of the doubt. That's what I keep coming back to.
All right, BLG, last thing for you. And again, always appreciate it whenever you hop aboard with us. You do a great job. Check out his website, Bleeding Green Nation. It's one of the best for the Eagle fans on a day-in, day-out basis. Howie Roseman, when he traded Zach Ertz, the next day came out and said, when asked, it might have even been you who asked the question about being a seller. Oh, I don't look at us as sellers. We're just giving other guys. And he couldn't go back to Jackson often enough, the off the scrap heap former quarterback tight end who had some nice practices in the preseason. Hasn't really done anything. Even in the preseason games, he didn't make plays. But he shows athletic ability, and I am very interested in seeing him play. But how he made it sound like a finished product. He just dismissed the whole we're a seller thing, which I get it. He has to do. Because you don't want to give other teams the leverage. Hey, we know you're dying to sell, Howie. We're not going to give you a squad. And they got to try and continue to win games. And that's one way to diffuse a locker room is show your hand that you're not really worried about winning games. So I get it that he had to say it, but he said it with such fervor it annoyed me that he was trying to make people believe, Eagle fans buying tickets. Oh, yeah, no, we're still in this. No, you're not. The reality is if they can sell over the next 8 days before the trade deadline drops, they will. Can they get anything for anybody on this roster? Anybody who would be capable of being dealt, advisable of being dealt. I threw out their cover corner last week, Maddox, and I was shot down because they need Maddox. They got to have Maddox going forward. I think anybody could be traded on this team with the way they're playing right now. Is Howie going to do more selling over the next 8 days, in your opinion?
He should be. I mean, except for like maybe Devontae Smith. I think every player on the roster shouldn't be untouchable. Every single player. I mean, and then Jordan Mailata too. We'll throw him in there, and I guess Josh Sweat maybe. But like most players, the point is, should be available for sale. I think there was rumors that Andre Dillard the Eagles are receiving calls on him, and I wonder who put that out there. And I'd be looking to sell high on him if you could, because I know he's looked promising, and you might be tempted to say, "Hey, let's keep him around." But like, I am not sold on him being a long-term piece, especially with Mailata under contract for multiple years, and Lane Johnson's still here under contract for multiple years. I would look to try to get what you can for him. If it's going to be a decent offer, I would look to move on from someone like Steven Nelson, who I think has played well this year, but he's on a 1-year deal. And I'm not so sure that you're going to be able to re-sign him to like a team-friendly deal in the offseason. I think you kind of might want to maximize. And a lot of teams have cornerback issues too. So I think maybe you can get like a 4th-round pick for him. I would take that. I know it kind of leaves you with a hole this year, but guess what? This year doesn't really matter a lot. Get what you can now and try to get pieces that you can build with for the future. So it would be nice to trade like Fletcher Cox and Derek Barnett and pieces like that. But the way the Eagles have restructured those contracts, they can't really do that. So they're kind of stuck with some of these pieces too, which, hey, great management again by Howie Roseman, doing a really bang up job there. So there are some pieces, but it's not going to be a complete fire sale. You just don't see that in the NFL. I think they should do that. I would like to see that, but I just don't think it's realistic. I think they make a couple more one or two more trades in terms of selling people, but I don't think much beyond that.
I just came up with one more name. It just dawned on me, and I want to ask you about it. Thanks for letting me hop in here, Jeff, to wrap this up. How about Gardner Minshew? There are some teams in the NFL that might be better than they thought they were going to be, and they didn't really bulk up or build up their backup quarterback position, and they know full well, if our guy goes down, we're probably screwed. Minshew is a guy who's proven that he can start in the league, not at a high level, but he's a starter. The Eagles gave up what they gave up for him. They might be able, even on a conditional basis, do better just by turning around and flipping him. If they move up one round from what they gave up to get him to what they could potentially give him for, is that worth doing? Or do they want to keep Gardner Minshew and maybe let him play last game, next to last game, couple games at the end of the season, and give him a shot to prove that he should be in the thought process for future quarterback of the Eagles?
Yeah, I would keep him if you're only getting an offer to like go up like a round. They give up a 6th for him and you're getting like a 5th. That doesn't really move the needle a whole lot for me. Yeah, I wouldn't do that, especially because if Hurts gets injured and he's missing significant time, there's just no benefit of playing Joe Flacco. You're not going to learn anything about this team or Joe Flacco's not going to be here next year. Like, there's just no point of playing Flacco at this point. The only point of playing Joe Flacco would have been if the Eagles were actually good this year and you needed a guy to kind of keep you afloat. I just don't see that. I think sooner than later, the Eagles should be keeping Minshew active on the game day roster, not only for the sake of if Hurts gets hurt and he has to play, but also for maybe a little bit of added heat on Jalen Hurts. Not that I think he necessarily needs that to play well, and that's the key, but to have that there could be a nice little extra motivation factor for him. So yeah, I would not be looking to deal him. I would, if anyone, I'd like to be moving Joe Flacco, but I don't know who's giving up anything for him.
That's why I went to Gardner Minshew, because someone might actually be interested in him. I don't think anybody's giving you anything for Joe Flacco at this point. BLG, always a pleasure. Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you much. We'll be reading you all week. Thanks, bud.
Thanks, guys.
Brandon Lee Gowton, the Bleeding Green Nation, here with us on Birds 365. All right, we got a good guest coming up next hour as well. Les Bowen, who covered the Eagles for decades for the Daily News Inquirer, doing some fill-in stuff here and there, Associated Press. LB will join us in hour number 2, but we'll come back. We'll further break down yesterday's beatdown in Las Vegas at the hands of the Raiders. Eagles, not good. Where do we go from here? We'll continue to talk about it. Jeff Carr, Jordan McDonald here on Birds 365.